Okay, this is Behind Closed Doors, Part 2. So I'm going to continue with the story of when my father left, when my father saw the rubber in the garbage. He immediately packed some things and left the house. And I remember my brother and I were still playing with our toys on the living room floor. And I just saw my dad leave. They were arguing, and my dad said, "I'm leaving, we're getting a divorce," or whatever. And I remember asking my dad, "Are you coming back?" And he said no. And I was really upset. Obviously I didn't understand everything that was going on then, but yeah, I was really upset. My dad wasn't coming back home, and nothing was going to be normal from then on, or the way that I was used to it being anyway. So after that, they went through the divorce. He would come visit my brother and I every week, and we would sit outside. And I remember this one time we were sitting on the swings. I was talking to my dad, and I was like, "Dad, please take me with you. Mom is really mean. She just got really mean to me, and she favored my brother." Like, I knew that I knew that from right then. As soon as my dad left, she hated me, and it was evident. I remember begging my dad, "Please take me with you. I don't want to stay here with her. Like, she's really mean to me." And he said, "I can't." And I asked why, and he said, "Because he lives with his mom right now, and he doesn't have a place for me to stay." I don't know. I wish he would have taken me. I don't know if he could have. I don't know, but I think he should have. But anyway, so they went through the divorce, and he had visiting rights every weekend. And during the week, like, my mom, every time we went to my grandmother's house, it seemed like she talked about my dad all the time. I just remember hearing so many bad, like, her tone was so bad and her tone was so hateful that, my brother and I just picked up on it. We're supposed to hate him for some reason. And it got to the point where, she was doing it every day. Every time, that she visited my grandmother, we would hear her talk this shit about my dad. And I just don't remember what she said. I just remember her tone. So it got to the point where, so my dad would pick my brother and I up on Fridays or Saturday morning at my grandmother's house. And I remember one weekend he came to get us, and she had been, bad-mouthing him so much that it made me afraid to go with him. And then Lee, my brother, he didn't want to go with my dad either. Like, he's just like, "I'm not going with him." And I couldn't really understand why. I just felt actually afraid of my mom. Like, if I went with my dad anyway, even though she hated him so much, I felt that I would be in trouble. And so anyway, this one weekend we were like, well, we don't want to go. My mom said, we told my mom, well, we don't want him to pick us up. We don't want to go with him. And she said, well, then you guys can tell him, okay? And I'm sure she got an immense pleasure out of that. As I've seen her work her bullshit before, and when she can get someone to turn against someone else, she gets this pleasure in it. Like, I've seen her gloat, like, just like almost grunting under her breath, like she just loved it so much. And so we told our dad, well, we don't want to go with you. So we're probably not in school yet. Like, you know, I was probably 4 years old. So my dad started crying out the door, like outside the door. He said, first my wife, first the divorce, and now my children don't even want to see me anymore. And he was crying, and he couldn't figure out why, but I know why now. I mean, because now they finally talk about this shit in psychology. I don't know, I'm kind of like upset. Like, why were you people so fucking stupid back in the day? Like, no one talked about narcissism or parental alienation, like the psychological abuse that has been going on. No one talked about it then. So he was crying, and I felt like mad anxiety. Like, I felt so bad that my dad was crying, and I just couldn't understand, but yet I was afraid to go with him. So the next weekend following, I asked my mom, I said, am I going to be in trouble for going with Dad? Like, are you going to be mad at me? Because she was always mad at me for bullshit. And I was trying really hard to go out of my way for her not to make her so she wouldn't be mad, just to please her. Because I couldn't endure that, you know, it was constant. But I said, are you going to be mad at me for going with Dad? And because I want to go with him, I don't want him to cry again. And she said, no, you won't be in trouble. So, you know, I asked her that in front of my grandmother too, and of course she's got to give the right answer with the right tone of voice, so she doesn't appear to be as wicked as she is. But so anyway, I went with my dad, but she had talked so much smack, like she had caused this division between us and my dad. Like, even, I don't know, even when I was with my dad, there was always this undertone of, I'm supposed to hate him for some reason. Like, he's not part of us. Basically, her reason behind that is because he knew what she did, and she wasn't getting her way with him. So, yeah, we were allowed to visit him every weekend, and then when she found out that she didn't have to give us up every weekend to visit him, it was like they passed a law or whatever, and they said it can be every other weekend. So then she switched it to mandate every other weekend, so she didn't have to see his face or whatever, and just to hurt him as well. And but yet, I remember her talking about the child support, but he had to still continue to pay child support. Because, I don't know, I think my dad brought it up, like, I still got to pay the child support, but yet I don't get to see my kids. And as soon as she found out she could raise the child support, she did that as well. Like, total fucking bitch. I don't know, whatever. Well, I'll get to that, but... So later on, so my grandfather died when I was 10 years old, and everyone was sort of meeting at the house, after he died, and Gary, her brother, the gay one, or the child molester, who she allowed to molest me, he was there too. And she had bad-mouthed Gary too, and Gary was always kind of bad-mouthed because he was my grandfather's favorite. So because he was favored, apparently my grandmother and the rest of the siblings hated him. So he was kind of like the black sheep of the family. Like, that's what a narcissistic family does. They have to have a black sheep or a scapegoat. So he was there, the family was just getting together, and then my mom started bad-mouthing Gary, like, right to his face. And then Gary brought up that he knew, he said, she said something about him being gay, and I don't know, to accuse him of something. And he said, well, you know, you're not innocent, you know, what about what you have done? And he said it in front of the whole family. So my mom, like, I don't remember the word for word, I was only 10, but I remember the argument, and I remember him pointing his finger at her like, you are in on it too. And she was outraged, and she's like, how could you accuse me of this? And you know, Gary was telling the truth, even though he's guilty too, but he was telling the truth in front of everyone. And then my mom, I don't know, she got my grandmother to side with her, and then my grandma turned around in her chair. They were sitting at the table. Gary was standing behind her, and she said, you are no longer, she said to Gary, you are no longer my son, and I don't ever want you to come back again. So, you know, even though the guy is a pedophile, you know, a faggot pedophile, and for what he did with, you know, for everything he did, I feel bad that, you know, he lost his father, who loved him a lot and favored him, and then shortly after he loses his mother disowns him, and the rest of the family was just like, well, you know, I guess that's the way it is, you know, we can't see you anymore. But, you know, so that happened then, but yet later in life, he was allowed to come and help us build that basement house. So my mom did reach out to him. So I was sitting sort of in the breezeway, like around the corner. There was a kitchen door, the breezeway, and then another door leading to the side porch. It was a farmhouse. So when Gary was leaving, he walked around where I was kind of like sitting on the steps on the other side of the kitchen door that was open. I was listening, and Gary looked at me, and he could tell by the look on my face like I was part of the clan with hating him for some reason, like because my mom said, and because my grandmother just disowned him. Of course, you know, I'm going to side with them. And he looked at me and he said, why do you hate me? And I just shrugged my shoulders, and he said, well, let me tell you something, you're going to be the next one that they scapegoat. Or he didn't use the word scapegoat, but he said, you're going to be next, you're going to be the next one after me. And lo and behold, I was definitely, but I don't know, I guess right then it was like I knew I was going to be the next. I could just feel it was the truth. I don't know, but I'm glad that I'm the scapegoat. I'm glad I'm the black sheep of that fucking family, I'll tell you what. Okay, so when I was about 7 years old, my mom had married my second stepdad. So yeah, after my dad left, later she married a man named Dave. That lasted a little while. He was a drinker, played some bullshit games. He's just kind of super mean. Like if my brother and I were talking in the bedroom after we were put to bed, we had bunk beds, sometimes we would laugh or whatever, and he would come in there and beat us with the belt for talking after the lights were out. So he was like super strict, but kind of overboard, mean. Also, other times he would, we didn't have a remote then for the television, and he would come home and demand that we took his boots off, and then he would say, you know, other times he would say, well, someone turn up the TV, and if Lee or I didn't hear him, he would scream it, like, turn up the fucking TV, like, and we'd be in trouble for not hearing him. Yeah, I remember one time I was sitting behind him. He was on his recliner, his lazy boy, and he said, quietly, turn up the TV. And I knew it was another trick. Like, if he had to say it too many times, he would get to bellow, you know, turn up the fucking TV. So I was like waiting for him to say it, like reading my book. I was in second grade, or yeah, I think it was second grade. I don't know, I was reading, but first or second grade, he said quietly, turn up the TV. And I just jumped up and I was like, okay, and ran to the television and turned it up. Like, I don't know, I was just so, didn't want to get yelled at, you know. But anyway, so when I remember 7 years old, so they had divorced. He liked his drinking and stuff, and I don't know, he just was sort of apathetic toward my mom, I guess. But in a sense, he was a straight up honest guy, but he was just mean. So she had remarried my second stepdad, Roger. So I was probably 12 or 13 years old when they bought 40 acres up against some state land. It was all woods, which she liked it. I didn't like it. It was boring. It was nothing but woods and, you know, grass or whatever. I mean, it was fucking boring out there. But yeah, that was when they finally were going to build the basement house. That was when she called Gary, and he was out helping Roger, my second stepdad, and her build that basement house. And that was when Mylan, my stepbrother, started hanging out with Gary. And Mom never, that's what I talked about in part one, she never mentioned to my stepdad, Roger, that Gary was a pedophile and he was gay. But yet she was letting Mylan hang out with him. So anyway, at this time, I hated it out there. I hated being out on that 40 acres. And I wanted to stay with my grandmother on the farm, you know, in the farmhouse. I had my own bedroom. Every morning and evening, I would go and take care of the calves. That was my responsibility. I know I would think I was 12, 13 years old, as I had said. And then I loved it out there so much. And I remember my mom briefly just said, don't tell your dad you're living out here. And I didn't understand why. And the reason why was because she was still getting the child support for my head, and was using it out there where she lived, even though Grandma was taking care of me. So my dad had called. I'm just a kid. Like, maybe I was probably older by then. I was probably 13, 14 years old. And then my dad had called. He would call every once in a while to see how I'm doing. And he called once. I was at my grandma's house, and of course, and he asked how I was doing. I was telling him how happy I was there, and that you know, I took care of the calves, and I really loved taking care of them. I loved the animals. I liked having my responsibility and my own bedroom, and I got along with my grandmother just fine. So I was telling him how happy I was. So my dad used this information to go and to fight the child support. And he said, why am I paying for her when you're not even taking care of her, but yet you're taking the money? And so he took it to court or whatever. So because of that, my mom made me leave the farmhouse and go and stay on the 40 acres just so she could collect her fucking money. And like, oh my God, she ruined my happiness. Like, I really loved it out there just so she could, you know, get her money. So I was out there and I just really fucking hated it. They put me in this bedroom where it was cramped in the, this was after the bullshit had happened with Gary molesting Mylan. So Gary wasn't around anymore, but she put me in this bedroom where my brother and my two stepbrothers had to walk through my bedroom. Like, I had absolutely no privacy. My bed was under the stairs where everyone came in and out, and my brothers all had to pass through my bedroom to get to their bedrooms. You know, because it was small in there, and there wasn't enough room for like a hallway. So yeah, my two stepsisters, they had their own room on another side of the house. But yeah, I had the room that all my brothers had to pass through. So I was around the age of 15 at this time, and I remember so my mom was off. She was, I think she had a double shift because she was a bus driver for the school. So she was away, and my dad and a neighbor and my stepbrother Mylan, like the guys, they were all out in the woods cutting wood for, you know, it was up in Michigan, so we had a wood stove, so in the summer they would cut wood for the winter for heat. So they were off doing their thing, but apparently, so I went in to take a shower, and on the bathroom door it was an old door that they used. My mom just like sanded it down and revarnished it or whatever, but it was an old door with an old keyhole in it that you could look in the keyhole and see into the bathroom, straight into the bathroom, everything. I went to take a shower. I thought they had all the guys had left, but my stepdad had come back down to refill his thermos with coffee, and I heard something pushing against the door, like, so, but I just like ignored it as like I knew he had come in the house. But then I heard when you push the door it would rattle a little bit because it wasn't completely snug in, so if you pushed against it you could hear it hit the frame. So I heard that and I was like, what the hell, you know? But I just got in the shower, took a shower, got out. I heard it again, and I'm walking toward the door with, like, as I'm wrapping the towel around myself, I'm walking toward the door to open it to see what the hell was going on. And my stepdad, I hit him in the face with the door because he had been peeking through that hole on me while I was in the shower, while I was in the bathroom. And I was like, I hated it there so much in the first place. But then I was like, I hit him in the face, and he was like, what? And then he acted like he had dropped the lid to his thermos, and he was bent over picking it up. But I knew that was not the case because it had been rattling, and I was wondering what the fuck was going on. And plus, why would I hit him in the face? He's like looking straight up at me, like, no. And it's right there where his face was right there where the keyhole was. And I just gave him this dirty look, and I shut the door, and then he left. They all went to go cut wood. And then I immediately like called my grandma. I said, come pick me up now. I am not fucking staying here anymore. So my grandma, like, she just got in her van and drove over to get me. I was packing my shit while she was coming, and then I told her what happened, and I was like, I am not staying there again. I don't care what mom says. I still didn't understand why at the time, like that it was because she wanted that money from my dad for child support. So I left with my grandma. this, you know, to think about it, your mom just puts a fucking, after her charging this guy and telling him, giving him permission to do what he could with me, like remembering this later, like there was a price tag on my head. She had no, that's not love. She had no love for me, but yet she would tell me, I love you. And I remember saying, no, you don't. And she would insist that I believe her. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And she did not love me. My mother did not love me. So if she did it, she was sick. She was just fucking sick. But so anyway, I go back to my grandmother's house, and then I told my mom what he did, and I said, and you're never gonna make me move back there. And she stayed with Roger for 2 more months. And also, looking back, when I was there, I don't know when Roger told me, but I remember her talking about it briefly when I was living there. But then later, Roger had told me that she would tell Roger that she wanted a threesome. She wished she could have a threesome with me, her, and with Roger. And Roger told me that later, like she would mention these things. So let me see. Oh, and then, okay, so she stayed with him for 2 more months. And I remember, you know, I'm at this age where I'm starting to realize how nasty, you know, I'm starting to get mad about it. Like, my mother is just fucking nasty. Oh, let me bring up something else. I don't know if I mentioned this in another video, but when I was there, we were talking about like getting raped and how would you handle it, how would you handle the situation, and this and that. And it was my dad, Roger, my stepdad, Roger, myself, and my mom. We were all sitting at the kitchen table. That was when I was out there on the 40 acres. And I said, well, I know I was never raped. And, you know, as a kid. So I'm just like, of course I wasn't. And my dad's just like listening to me. And then my mom, it was like something came up in her, and she was just like, oh yeah, how do you know? And then I was thinking, well, you know, yeah, there were times in my life that I wouldn't have remembered because I was too young. And then I just said to her, well, if I was, it's your responsibility. You were my mother. You were supposed to watch out for me. And like she was just weird. Like, and I know it was a demonic spirit manifesting, and I believe it was the spirit of probably Lilith or Jezebel, for anyone who understands spirits and what they stand for. But yeah, she's like, how do you know? And I said, well, it would have been your responsibility because you were my mother, so you were supposed to watch out for me. And then she just got like this fear, and then all of a sudden she couldn't talk, and she went straight to the bedroom and laid down. Like, I was like, what's wrong with her? And then my dad was like looking like, what is wrong with her? My dad and I, or Roger and I, looked at each other. This was before he was peeping through the door. So we looked at each other, and I was like, my mother is just weird. She's a weirdo. And I was starting to come to realization of that, you know. So yeah, after the peeping Tom bullshit, him through the bathroom door, I remember, you know, it was like really hitting home with me, like, my mother is fucking weird. And I knew she was still sleeping with Roger, and now looking back, it probably turned her on that he was trying to get an eyeful of me naked. And she stayed with him for 2 more months. She moved, finally she had to file for a divorce. I mean, she was kind of put on the spot, and I don't know, she had to move back out to the farmhouse with my grandmother. And then after that, I wasn't allowed to stay upstairs in my own bedroom with my grandmother anymore. I had to sleep downstairs in this makeshift bedroom area that my mom made in the basement. You know, I had to sleep in the bed with her. I fucking hated it. I hated being with her. Shortly after that, my Roger and my mom had this couple that they would always go to visit, and they would play cards, and their kids and us kids would all like play together. So we were like friends, family friends. And shortly after she had moved back to the farmhouse, she started dating the husband from that family. Like, she, I don't know, threw herself at him or whatever. Maybe she wanted to get back at Roger for what he did. I don't know, but she went out. His name was Doug. She was fucking this guy behind the wife's back. Oh, and then so we went to visit some friend, and Beverly was there. Doug's wife's name was Beverly, and so she was visiting with this friend Pat. I don't know, she liked to go and visit people and gossip. It was just bullshit, never my song and dance. But Beverly came over, and the three of them were sitting at the table, and Beverly said, I just know that my husband, that Doug, is cheating on me. I just don't know who it's with. And it was my mom. And so my mom got up, and she was just like, well, we gotta go. And so I was sitting in the living room, and she's like, come on, Candy, we gotta go. And we left. Later, she had gone out with Doug again. This was after Beverly found out it was her. So my mom was like, well, we might get married. And oh my God. So she came home one night, and I think it was after Doug had told her no more, and I want my wife and my family. I'm not leaving my wife, and I'm not going to see you anymore. Like, he dumped my mom. And she came home and gotten into bed where I had been sleeping. And she asked, this is like the one time that I could see any guilt on her. Like, and she asked me a question. She's like, what do you think of me for what I'm doing? And you know, I just still didn't really have an opinion. And well, maybe I was starting to form one, and she could tell. She knew I hated being in the bed with her. I hated it. I just didn't want to be around her. And I think she could see that. And then I replied, I don't have an opinion. And I don't think I was old enough to actually acknowledge that I was beginning to really hate her.